Dark Souls 2 is weird because it's one of the only games I've ever seen where a community simultaneously overhypes the game and completely overhates the game at the same time. I think that this game has a lot of problems, but also it's not a bad game at all. Like, the people who say it's fully bad are just wrong, but I also believe the people who think this is a phenomenal game and is the best in the series are completely wrong as well, because to me, this is a middle of the road game. Or in other words, it's passable, but it's definitely not insane. And I would want to mention before starting this that I did 100% this game, got all the achievements, and also I'm going to be reviewing the original game, not the Scholar of the First Sin, as I didn't know what the Scholar of the First Sin was, so I didn't buy it. I'm just mentioning that because of the fact that, yes, Scholar of the First Sin does have differences than the original, but it's pretty much the same game at the end of the day. Anyways, let's get started. Let's start off with the core gameplay. The combat in this game, honestly, is for the most part actually an improvement based off of the first game, Dark Souls 1. Unlike Dark Souls 1, you can now roll in 8 directions instead of rolling in the cardinal directions, which actually is very nice. It just feels more natural to be able to roll to, angles. Another thing that they changed with the combat in this game compared to Dark Souls 1 is they did make dodge rolling faster and threshold for fat rolling a lot more reasonable. One of my complaints with Dark Souls 1 is that the game felt like it was too clunky to move around, and that was because of the fact that just in general you move slower. The threshold for fat rolling was at 50% or higher, which is just outrageous, and in this game it's 70%, which is a lot more reasonable to manage. It also means now I can wear whatever armor I want and actually move around reasonably. A light roll in Dark Souls 1 is equivalent to a medium roll in this game, so you just genuinely move faster, and that applies to all the other games. So there is some nice innovation with the movement system that I can appreciate. Another thing they changed is when you lock onto an enemy, you can now swing in 3 directions instead of 1. So in the other games, when you lock onto an enemy, you can only swing towards the enemy. In this game, you can move to the northeast or the northwest direction of the enemy, which, I'm going to be honest, I do not know why they did this, and it's one of those minor gripes I want to mention, because I do think it can be problematic, as the whole reason why you want to lock on is to kind of guarantee you that you're going to hit an enemy, and it's nice that you can kind of like control your character more. That's not why I locked on for. So sometimes locking on is not fun to deal with, and sometimes it just doesn't feel good because you will miss the enemy. Granted, yes, it is a skill issue at the end of the day if you miss the enemy because you probably aimed your sword in that direction away from the enemy, but why did you make it that way? That's not why I locked on. That is what I'm trying to get at. It's like if I wanted to aim my sword, then I would just lock off. It's not the biggest deal ever, and for the most part, it's not that noticeable. I mean, I never really had too many problems. Okay, now let's talk about the elephant in the room. The health system. I genuinely don't know what they were thinking. So if you don't know, basically if you die, you lose HP permanently until you decide to use an item to restore it all the way back. Dark Souls as a whole is designed where you are going to die. It's trial and error. You have to learn from your mistakes. And the game already punishes you. All the other Souls games, including Dark Souls 1, already punishes you by making it so that when you die, you drop your souls, and if you don't recover them and you die again, then you lose your souls permanently. To me, that is a great way to punish someone for dying, because it's not an immediate punishment for dying, but rather a punishment for not being good enough to get back to the area you were in. And the fact that every time you die in this game, not only do you have the risk of losing your souls, but now you lose your HP is overdoing it. It just feels like a punishment to die and not a learning experience, because, oh, I'm learning a new boss and I die? Well, looks like I'm just going to have harder time the next time I fight the boss because my health goes down. Now, granted, I'm going to be honest, the game is semi-balanced around the idea of you having less HP, but it's still annoying, and the human effigies, I will admit, if you explore the areas, you're going to have a surplus of them most of the time, so it's not the end of the world, but it's just the concept behind it is still annoying, because in this game, when you die to something, it just feels a lot more annoying rather than just something that just happens. It feels like a punishment. Speaking of the health system, I also want to mention the healing system, which I think they kind of messed up a little bit, where basically instead of Estus Flask and Divine Blessings giving you the full health as soon as you drink it, you now have to regenerate your health pretty fast, but not fully fast, which I just find kind of annoying, because it's like, why do you need that? In a game where you're already not going to be at max HP a lot of the times, why do you need to make healing just that much more tedious? It's like, oh, if I heal, I'm not guaranteed going to be at full HP, which means if I get hit in the after I heal, I still can easily die. Life gems are a nice addition, but to me, life gems should be the ones that do the regenerative healing, and Estus Flask and Divine Blessing should just instant heal you, so that it gives you those options. It would make life gems make a lot more sense, but a current system, it doesn't make sense. And another thing to note is the fact that Estus Flask in these games suck. Estus Flask in this game absolutely sucks in the sense that it heals at a snail's pace, and that is because it's tied to a stat, which, yeah, let's bring up the stats. The leveling system in this game adds 2 new stats, and I'm not a big fan of either one of them, to be honest. Now let's start with the elephant in the room, ADP. This stat is game changing. It's broken. It shouldn't even be in the game. Let's start off with the obvious thing about ADP. It literally allows you to dodge roll for longer. You get more invincibility frames. There's a reason this is not in any other games. One of the things that's really important with this game is it's an RPG. You get to role play your character, and having a stat that is inherently super overpowered and completely changes the outcomes of the entire game tied to a stat is bad. What I'm trying to get at is, in an RPG game like this, you should never feel forced to level up a stat, but no matter what class or whatever you're trying to do in this game, ADP is an essential stat to level up because it's that good with the dodge rolling. On top of that, how do you balance a game about fighting when the core game, like the core way to evade attacks, is not guaranteed? Meaning, you can't guarantee someone's going to have a certain level of ADP at any point in the game. So how do you balance the game? Well, hint hint, they didn't. Because guess what? None of the bosses require you to level up ADP. So then it goes to, why does the stat exist? To make the game easier for people? Sure, but also, like, it's game breaking. So why would no one, like, even for good people, why would they not level it up? So it just means that if you level this up, the game becomes a multitude easier because none of the bosses are designed around this stat at all. And then the worst part is oh yeah, being able to dodge roll more efficiently. That's not OP enough. Let's add another benefit to the stat. You heal faster. Yeah. The Estus Flask by default heals so slowly that it literally feels like a punishment to use it. It feels so horrible to use. But if you level up ADP, it suddenly feels like, oh, this is actually really good. Brings me to my point of that this stat inherently is the best stat in the game. Undeniably, there's no reason to not level it up. And, the other problem with this game, too, is the fact that the game gives you more souls, levels cost the least amount, meaning it's easier than ever to over-level this stat, which just means that you can just become overpowered basically from the get-go and have no issues with most of the game. The good positive thing with being able to level up a lot, though, is the fact that obviously that means you can also, experiment with what you want to level up in, and you're not necessarily punished for over leveling a stat that you might not want later down the road because you can afford to level up a lot more. Still a problem because at the end of the day, this game suffers an issue where the bosses in this game aren't hard, and that's usually because of the fact that you can over level yourself so easily without even trying. Now granted, these things I dislike a lot and I do have strong wording, but they're not the end of the world. I don't think these bring the game down that severely. It's just, it's mistakes. By the end of the day, it's still not the worst thing ever. Like, for me, the whole ADP thing, it's overpowered, but, I also appreciate it because, oh, well, the game's a lot easier. While the ADP thing is annoying, it's, once you understand what it does, it's not a big deal because you just level it up. The HP thing, if you're good enough at the game, you get to a point where you're not dying often enough to really care. So it's not the end of the world. These things are not the biggest deal ever. It's just annoying for people who are new to this game or new to the series, On a really good note, I think the biggest strength of this game, and the thing that makes me appreciate this game a lot, is the fact that this game has the most versatility. As you said, the fact is you can level up easier than ever, which means you can make whatever you build you want so easily. Another thing is also to note, there's just so many armors, there's so many weapons. I mean, honestly, the armors are a huge strength of this game. I think they have some of the coolest armor sets, like the Drakeblood Knight armor set. Oh my god, that's nasty. Oh, it's great. And also, the inclusion of more ring slots is amazing because it means that now you can mess around with more rings. I felt like in Dark Souls 1, 2 ring slots was kind of just very limiting and felt like felt like I was in prison low-key. If that makes any sense. I mean, the addition of hexes is amazing, as that's literally a whole new class to build around, and they have some really cool spells. I've only messed with it a little bit, but it was pretty fun. And they also added a lot more spells, pyromancies, faith web things. It's great. There's a lot more customization and versatility in the gear you can use. And also I should mention the inclusion of the Soul Vessel is an amazing addition. This is the first game in the Soul series that allows you to redo your leveling at the cost of a Soul Vessel, which there's a few of them in each game. So realistically, if you explore enough, you'll have like quite a few of these. So it's not like very limited or anything. So it's actually really a good change. Because Dark Souls 1 again, it was actually kind of frustrating that if I wanted to play a mage build, now I'm gonna have to soul farm for eternity just to fix my stats up. Let's start off by talking about the world. Now, in Dark Souls 1, I praised the world because it was super interconnected, with multiple areas interconnecting, having many shortcuts that lead to bonfires. This game doesn't really have that. Instead, this game takes the approach of you go to the main hub, you go down a path, and it leads to a bunch of different areas. That's fine. I don't hate that idea necessarily, but what I don't like about this world design necessarily is the fact that it doesn't feel like one big world, but rather a bunch of small separate worlds. You go down a path, and it leads to all these different areas, but they never feel like they're part of one big area. When you look at Lordran from Dark Souls 1, everything in there, you visually see the areas you're in, and you can kind of picture like, okay, this is where this is, that's where that is. Like, for example, that if you're in Sense Fortress, you can visually see the Duke's Archives, where Andrew Londo would be, you can see the Undead Parish, and so on. Like, when you're in an area, you can see other areas, where in this game, there's never really a time where I can go, oh, I see in the background Dranic Castle. I pronounced that horribly. Drainlick? However you pronounce that. You don't have those moments where you see areas that are ahead of you or areas that you were in previously. And so the world never really feels like one big world, but rather just paths that leads to their own worlds. It's not necessarily the worst thing ever, but I do feel like it does have an impact on the world for me. I mean, it's simple. It's something as simple as just being able to see Draenlight Castle would have been so cool. Imagine going to the Dragon area. I think it's how you pronounce it, the place in the sky with all the dragons, and you look down, you see Drunlin Castle, just a little bit of the tip of his castle peeking through the clouds or something. You know how cool that would have been? I mean, it's just something as simple as that. And the other thing is also that it's kind of jarring is the fact that transitions between places feel kind of crazy. I mean, the greatest example of this is Harvest Valley to Iron Keep is crazy if you really think about it, because you're in a windmill, you go in an elevator which goes up and leads to Iron Keep, which for one, Iron Keep has lava all around it, so you're telling me this lava is in the sky. Two, there's not a visual elevator from the outside of this windmill that leads up, so you just get to wondering, you're like, how is this even happening? I mean, the simple solution would have literally just been make the elevator go down, but it's just something to note that, like, areas sometimes just feel like the transitions between areas feel super jarring and weird. Like the fact that Hyde's Tower just leads to No Man's Wharf, like, pretty much instantly is crazy to me. Again, these are not necessarily the worst things ever, because, yeah, they're kind of just, like, quality of life features that would have been nice to have. They don't really affect gameplay, but, for me personally, it's something that I noticed that I thought I'd bring up. And, overall, I do think the world design's main strength is the fact that it has so much diversity in the layouts that you get. Even though it feels so jarring to go between areas, it feels very nice to have so much variety in areas. For example, you get unique moments like Dreamlake Castle, No Man's Wharf is one of my favorites, Hyde's Tower, you got the Dragon area. All these areas are so unique and different, and it does help make the world feel more interesting to explore. Now let's get into the level design. Now, I think the game as a whole, level design wise, is alright at best. I'll start with the good. I think the areas in this game that actually stand out, and there's a few of them, tend to be the areas that they promote exploration. Now, as I said before in Dark Souls 1 review, is that these games are at their peak when they actually allow you to explore, because these games are exploration games. That's what makes them fun. Exploring what it has to offer, finding the secrets. Problem is, in this game, there's not that many of them, to be honest. You look at something like a Harvest Valley, it's perfect. There's so many different things to discover. You go through the poison mist and you're finding all these different little caves. You go in the windmill, there's multiple paths. You can burn down the windmill, get to discover that, oh, the boss will be easier. It's things like that I love. Or even No Man's Wharf, where, you explore all these different buildings in this dock and there's tons of items to find. You can even find out that you can light up the lighthouse or the whole dock and prevent enemies from attacking you, that would be a huge problem. It's things like that. Like, okay, that's cool, but there's not enough of those areas because ultimately a lot of the areas suffer from the problem of one, either A, having not a lot to find, or two, having too many enemies. And I think that's the biggest problem. The main problem in this game comes down to ultimately is the enemy placement. I think the enemy placement ruins a lot of areas that could be cool because there are quite a few areas that I think are really cool to explore, but the enemies are too much. It feels like they thought, oh, what would make this game hard? Oh, I know. Add as many enemies as possible. And they just put down as many enemies as possible and thought that's the solution right there, you know? The difficulty in this game does not come from bosses. It doesn't come from anything besides the enemies. There's too many of them. I'd say the areas that end up being the worst areas, the areas that I find repulsive, worse than, Lost Izalith or even the Tomb of the Giants from Dark Souls 1, the areas that I just despise with a passion are the areas where they throw just a crap ton of enemies at you and then have guys shooting projectiles at you at the same time. All these keep pisses me off. I hate that area with a passion. Why? Why do you put me in water that prevents me from moving fast? Add these annoying enemies that are hidden underwater. On top of that, add more enemies and then say, oh, let's add mages in the distance that fire upon you. How is that fun? And on top of that area, by the way, that's the worst area in the game. That by the way, I hate that area so much. They have nothing. There's nothing to explore that's interesting. There's like a chest in the middle of the water, and that's about it. There's nothing fun to find. Nothing of interest, at least. Another area example, Iron Keep. Wow, I love when I methodically have to kill all these knights one by one, and then while I'm doing that, I'm getting shot by 2 archers at the same time. Oh, and by the way, these archers are out of reach and are very inconvenient to reach. Yeah, I love that so much. Said nobody ever. Oh, don't even get me started on Brightstone Cove as well. Oh, millions of spiders and these dumb mage idiots on high ground that you barely can reach. And if you happen to fall, oh, good luck getting back to them. So you're just getting beamed constantly. And by the way, millions of spiders. And the thing about it is, yes, if you do fight them, yes, is it somewhat reasonable to get through? Yeah, eventually you will. But I don't find it fun to fight millions of enemies at once. I never will. I mean, even somewhere like Huntsman's Copse, the run back to the chariot boss, it's just brutal. Like, it's not hard necessarily to kill those enemies, but they all jump down at once, so you can't kill them one by one. And when they all jump down at once, it's so hard to kill them in reasonable time because you're getting absolutely destroyed. At the end of the day, I'm fine with, killing the enemies one by one. I think that's reasonable. But one, there's 2 points with this. One, the game throws too many enemies at you to the point where it's not fun to fight them. And two, if I'm on a boss, I'm not killing the enemies every single time I go to the boss. I want to make that clear. Because I've seen people make the point who defend this game and say, oh, well, you're obviously not supposed to run through the enemies. Yes, you're not. Obviously, you shouldn't do that. But at the same time, if I'm stuck on a boss, I'm not killing the enemies every single time. What do you think? I'm just going to sit there and kill all these enemies over and over and over and over every time I fail the boss? No. That's just going to make the process much more slower and drain my heals. It's somewhat reasonable in most scenarios to kill the enemies, but there are too many scenarios and areas where I just feel like the enemies are such a huge issue. I will note, yes, they did add the feature that, oh, if you do kill the enemies, I believe it's 12 or 13 times, they will just never spawn again, which I can respect that, especially considering you can get the enemies back if you're trying to farm through bonfire aesthetics. I'm not trying to be stuck on an area for that long. I mean, it's a nice cop-out, but it's not good enough. If you know that people are going to be struggling to an area for a long time, that you make that feature, you gotta start wondering, was that area designed well? Because think about it, why else is that in the game, that feature? There's no reason to implement that unless you were trying to make it so that people who were suffering a ton actually get through. And to top this all off, New Game Plus exists. Now, let me just say this. New Game Plus in this game has cool ideas. I do like the idea of adding new enemies, changing the layout of the stuff you can find, because yeah, New Game Plus is kind of boring if you're playing it and it's the same thing over again, right? So changing it's nice, but the way they change it, at least for level design, is not great. Their solution is to just add more enemies. And I'm not gonna lie, it was way more miserable. Aldia's Keep, again, 10 times more miserable, to the point where I literally questioned, why am I playing this game? I almost did not 100% this game because of the fact that I had to go through Aldi's Keep, which took me literally forever to get through on New Game Plus because they added more enemies. I don't get how you think the solution to making the game harder and more interesting is to add more enemies in a game that already had too many enemies. I mean, and they even ruined areas that I liked previously, like High Tower Flame, an area that I thought that in the base game, the first playthrough, is actually pretty reasonable to go through because you can kind of bait each of the guards out one by one. They just decided to add more and then add more phantoms as well, making it so that you're just fighting multiple guys at once. It's not fun remotely. It just ruins the entire place in my opinion. Why they do that? Who knows? Another thing to note about the level design is unlike in the Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3, instead of having secret doors or basically doors that you can't open for a while because you need a key or it's locked on the other side, right? You now have Pharaoh's Lockstones, which basically is a door, but you just can't see what's behind it ever because it allows you to see or access hidden walls. Now, I don't absolutely hate this feature, but the old system was just better. Being able to see, hey, there's some corpse behind the door, behind this jail cell, right? Or, oh, there's an NPC I could talk to. It was like, it makes you go, oh my god, I need to figure out a way to get there. Whereas this, it's just like, oh, well, I have no idea if this Pharaoh's Lockstone actually leads to anything. I'm gonna have to gamble if it does anything. Because there are a couple examples of Pharaoh's Lockstones literally doing a whole lot of nothing. Again, I don't think it's the worst idea ever, but why downgrade? It just makes it so that you don't actually know you're missing stuff. Alright, bosses in this game are the weakest part of this game. Undeniably. Here's what I'll say. I don't think that having an okay or mediocre boss lineup is necessarily the biggest deal ever because, you know, Dark Souls 1's boss lineup wasn't necessarily the greatest, and I didn't really mind it because it had some really good fights. This game has no good fights. I'm exaggerating slightly, but there is so little fights that are memorable that it's just like sad. The biggest problem with this game is either A, the bosses are ridiculously easy to the point where they don't feel like a boss, or two, the run back there is so insufferable that you don't even want to run to the boss anymore. I think the main reason why bosses in this game end up being super easy is, I mean, obviously ADP and the fact that you can overlevel yourself super easily as discussed before, but also it just feels like the designs of them are so primitive. I mean, the obvious examples of these would be like Demon of Song. A Demon of Song is so, oh my god, I just remembering him made me so angry. He's this guy who looks hard and all he does is clap his hands. So once you realize, oh, he claps his hands, like there's literally no other move besides the fact he can jump. What a joke of a boss. Dragon Rider? Oh my god, what a joke of a boss as well. He's got like 3 attacks and they're so obvious to avoid. And I don't even want to name the bosses that everyone names. Like, oh yeah, obviously the Congregation boss. What a joke of a boss. I mean, we all know the Covetous Demon is just a joke as well. I mean, the Skeleton Lords. Are we serious? Just throwing a bunch of skeletons into a fight? It's not a fight. Just fighting common enemies. Don't get me wrong, there's some fights that I actually enjoy, but I hate to break it to everybody, those fights tend to be ruined by the runbacks. You know, Looking Glass Knight, I actually like the fight, but the runback's kind of tedious. My personal favorite fight outside of DLCs in this game, the Smelter Demon, has one of the worst runbacks of all time. The Royal Aegis, another one that has an annoying runback, as there's just 2 million enemies guarding the door. I mean, it's so bad that even the endgame bosses feel like Ornstein Smoke from Dark Souls 1 is considerably harder than any boss in this game. That's not good, and that's not a good thing. Ultimately, I think the main downfall of bosses is that they had to balance them with the character, which, how do you balance the game bosses around a character that could at any point have 50% max HP, have too many levels in ADP, and just be over leveled in general? How do you bounce around that? Yeah, you just can't. It would be impossible. So they kind of shot themselves in the foot by the system they created. And I ultimately think, I don't think anyone could really make bosses for this game that would actually be fully balanced around the character. I think the biggest problem with this game is actually the difficulty. I think that unlike Dark Souls 1, the game actually does have moments where the game feels difficult, but not fairly difficult. One of my main points of Dark Souls 1 is that oftentimes the game felt fair when you died. It was because of your fault. It was your fault. This game, there's just too many situations where I genuinely just looked at it, the situation, and said, that's not necessarily my fault, that's just bad design. And that's not a good thing. You know, top all it off, the bosses are easier than ever, while the runbacks are more difficult than ever, so it's like just a messy situation because it's the worst recipe you can make for a game like this. So you might be wondering, why did you call this game mid if you're complaining so much? Because ultimately there are enough good moments and great things this game has done that it does kind of outbalance balance the situation. Sure, I don't like the bosses that much, but it is somewhat satisfying to just prowl, like just go through bosses with ease. Even though I know it's not necessarily because I'm great at the game, it's still satisfying to hit a boss and do a crap ton of damage and be like, oh my god, look how easy I'm going through it. It's fun. The exploration overall in this game isn't that bad. It's just specific areas have really bad enemy layouts, but you know, if you get used to it, it's somewhat fun to explore the world. I think that personally, your first playthrough is gonna be pretty fun if you actually take your time to explore it. The NPC quest lines are actually pretty nice as they're easy to follow. I mean, most of the important NPCs can talk to end up not going back into areas that you already previously explored, but rather show up later in areas you haven't explored yet. Which is good because frankly I hated the whole idea of like, oh now I gotta backtrack in this random area that I'd never go back to just to talk to this guy at a specific moment. That was way too annoying. You know, they also just did a lot of quality of life features. I love the idea of bonfire aesthetics in the sense that like you can make the area more difficult. It's easier to farm souls, get soul farms running. You can farm bosses easier. It's a pretty nice addition. Like I said earlier, I like the idea of the character creation being better than ever. Being able to personalize your character is easier than ever, and I'd argue the most interesting. I also think there's some areas that are, like I said earlier, pretty fun to explore. Some pretty redeemable moments, like looking at Dragonlink Castle for the first time is pretty great. The lore, I don't fully understand the lore, but I do like how they take a different turn instead of going down the generic path of like, oh, you're just a nobody who is going to fulfill, the duty that everyone tries to do. Now you're a character who lost his identity and is trying to make purpose for himself, and you're basically creating a new version of yourself. I like that idea, and also I like how it's way more visually apparent of like, hey, this is what's going on in the world. Like you can see the rotting, the hollowing. Like the fact you could see yourself visually hollowing is an amazing touch. I don't fully understand the lore, but I do think it's pretty interesting from what I understand. But yeah, the biggest thing this game does well is quality of life features for sure. I didn't even name all of them. Those are just a few that came off the dome. But I think that's its biggest strength is the quality of life features. Ultimately, this game is fun to play if you want to just have a really like pretty much overpowered experience. Like you want to play a game where you just obliterate everything in your path. This is the game. Yeah, like I said, there are areas that are brutal, but I'm sure if you were a mage or something, you could build a build that just demolishes everything. I never really bothered to do that, but I'm very much sure of it. But yeah, that is ultimately why I think this game is mid. I do think that the people who praise this game and say it's the best Souls game are crazy due to the fact that, no, it doesn't really do well in the category of what makes a Souls game great. I mean, the bosses aren't that great, the level design's not that fantastic, so, like, those two aspects alone are what makes up a great Souls game, so I don't know how people can say this is the greatest Soul game. Although, the other aspect, I don't understand how people say this is the worst game of all time, because it's like, no, it's not necessarily the worst game of all time. Did you try playing it slow? Did you actually explore the areas? And the people who say, oh, this game is one of the worst games ever, usually over-exaggerate points or just completely admit that they play the games, like, just to get through them. I feel like if you play this game just to say you beat it, you're not going to like this game. Definitely not. That is my opinions on Dark Souls 2.